to get the file. Wait, somebody did it for us.
I did it, and I was able
Good.
to do it to the cloud. So I don't know why it's different for me, but at least this way we're recording.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Well, would you like to start and welcome everyone, and then I can kind of segue in, and we'll just do that. You know, since you've been a longer rip, just give them a little greeting, everyone, and here's the.
Okay.
I'll go ahead and share my screen, and then you can turn it right over.
Absolutely. Everybody, my name is Gina Stevens. I am faculty here at the University of Arizona Global Campus, and I've had the honor of teaching in and being on the advisory committee for the honors program, as is Mr. Davis, who is here with us today. We're going to talk today about conflict management. And this is a really important topic, not just at work, but at home. And Bill is an expert in this field. So I'm sure I'm going to learn a lot from Bill too. And I'll let Mr. Bill Davis talk a little bit more today.
Genea, thank you so much. And Derek and Charlotte, and for everybody that's going to listen later, thank you for being here and taking interest in conflict management. I'm very passionate about conflict management, and it's helped me significantly in my career. And today, what the goals are to give you some constructs, some concepts that you can use. And what we're going to do today, we're going to explain conflict, define it. Then we're also going to talk about Frederick Glassow's model, who is a conflict researcher. He is still around, and he's done tremendous work throughout his career and written books on this, researched, etc. But he's a renowned expert on conflict management and escalation. So you're going to get introduced to him at the end. Then we're going to, a big part of this presentation is around the best-selling book, Getting to Yes. It's very practical. You will enjoy it. You'll probably want to run out and get it. It's been around a while, but this particular book has helped me. It's helped me at Ashford University before we became University of Arizona Global. We would actually lecture on this, present this to some faculty, etc. And I've used this in business. But we're going to talk about those principles. And then we're also going to talk about different tools you can use to recognize conflict and to resolve conflict. And then we're just going to talk a little bit about communication principles and mention a little bit about organizational change as that occurs. When you look at the principles of the book, basically it's a 5-chapter book. And chapter 1 deals with problems that arise using the standard strategies for positional bargaining. Chapter 2 is the 4 principles of the method. We're going to go through those, and Genea will take a couple of those too, and I'll take a few, and we just want to present the content right now. Then we're going to open up some discussion and give you some real world examples, some real life examples, personal, professional. And this is just going to be a conversation with you, Derek, and Charlotte, and Genea, and myself, so that we can apply this model and discuss how it applies in our lives. And I do not think you will be disappointed. You'll be very glad that you're here. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about negotiation, what's meant by successful negotiation, what are some skills that you need to negotiate, what's an objection, what's an outcome, what are some successful or unsuccessful negotiations that you've been involved in. I know I've had a few. And then what were the outcomes? Sometimes they're favorable, sometimes they're unfavorable. Sometimes we might take more, we might try too hard. But when you unpack the box and you use review and reflection, you find out that I probably could have handled that differently, or I could have started out differently. Maybe I didn't listen and take into consideration the other person. So there's a lot of dynamics at play when conflicts occur. But today you will learn later after this PowerPoint, the Glassow's model. You're going to see just how conflict progresses in 9 stages. So with that said, let me tell you that negotiation is simply, it's a process in which to reach an agreement. I'm going to give you an example. I have the pleasure and opportunity here to work with Dr. Genea Stevens, and I've known her a while in the honors program. Pleasure to work with. I know when I've seen her present, she does a super job. When I'm presenting, she's always in the audience with a smile. And to work with her is an absolute pleasure. So in this process to reach an agreement, that's pretty easy because we both have the same interest, produce a quality presentation. So we get to the goal pretty fast. And we just work to achieve a mutually acceptable solution, a satisfying conclusion, an attempt to reconcile what constitutes a good result for you and for the other party. In our case, in that particular example, which the stakes aren't very high. I mean, if we made an error, but when you're negotiating for something, sometimes, there can be very, very high stakes that if you're not right, you could lose a deal, you could affect something in business. So you want to be right, but we want good results for the other party. We want a win-win. We want both sides to win something. And we want to prepare, propose, debate, bargain, close. Now, we're not going to say all those things in a dynamic, but take away some of those things, those constructs, and just think about them. Think about how they apply in your life. Think about maybe a negotiation you had to buy a car. Think about maybe a negotiation you had with your supervisor or someone in life to get to an end goal. How did that go? We'll talk more about that, but hopefully we got your wheels, you're thinking a little bit here, you're moving forward and you're ready to learn. Now, skills you need a wide range. You got to be objective and flexible, right? You can't get totally emotional and get too much into it. You got to be able to still stay objective, right? And be flexible, because in some cases, the other party may have some demands too. We want to prepare well in advance. We want to interact. We want to listen. So important, and question. We want to be flexible. Being flexible, if you take a position, no, I'm not, we're going to do this on Wednesday, not Tuesday. You dig in. Sometimes that can be a weakness because you could have come to a better result, a better conclusion. I always said when I would educate on strategic planning, and in my career, I would always say tight ends, loose means. So I wanted that creative side. I wanted to get to that goal. Now, on some issues, you got to be tight in the front end, but sometimes when you're collaborating, you want that creative side. You want that to come out, and you want to get to that end goal that you both see. Again, that's a win-win. But emotional intelligence, that plays into it all too. Self-awareness, social awareness, relationship management, managing yourself, self-management. All of those things are key and important when you're negotiating or you're trying to resolve a conflict. I mean, you want to understand the dynamics, the processes and characteristics in the situation. You want to prioritize clearly. You want realistic targets. You just want to make adjustments as you go. So you will get a copy of this. These are my own personal notes from the professional selling courses that I have taught, professional sales and marketing, as well as what I've actually done in my career. I learned a lot of these in the Pepsi days and so forth. So, and I've taught account executives some of these things too. So I'm going to let Genea just maybe cover the next 2 or 3 slides. If you could just, take them and go, and you can just tell me next slide. There's like 4 or 5 the same way, Genea, and then you could give it back to me. Okay.
Okay, sure. So as Bill said, negotiation occurs all the time. And it's not always like a big deal. Sometimes it's the little things. It's what movie should we go see? You have to talk about it. And one person gives a little, maybe both people give a little, or maybe you take turns. Negotiation is as basic as 2 people agreeing on something. So there's the little ones and then there's the big ones. And everyone's different, but as he said, the elements don't change. It's about 2 or more people coming together, looking at what each one wants and finding a way to give both of them or all of them as much of what they want as possible. And so you're going to be able to apply these elements for the small things in your day-to-day life and for the big things professionally, academically, and maybe the big things in life. Maybe you're negotiating on something important with your family or your significant other. It can occur at all levels, but they're still going to have the same elements And the more in control you are, the more cognizant of the emotional resonance that the issue has for yourself, as well as the other people involved, can impact how successfully and how positively you can get there. Negotiation can be positive or negative, depending on, thank you, Bill, on how you want it to be. And these are the 4 components that we talk about. Try and focus on the issue and not the emotions or the people. And don't dig yourself into a position that you can't dig yourself out of, because negotiation generally applies a little bit of give and take, being willing to hear the other person's concerns or perspective and look for ways to meet just not your needs, but meeting their needs as well. And we talk about using objective criteria. Remember that perception, like all forms of communication, is tied to us individually, because I perceive something one way, Bill may perceive it a different way, Derek may perceive it another way, and Charlotte will perceive it another way. We all bring all these complex backgrounds and feelings into an issue, and sometimes we need to separate our personal issues or perspectives from that. And as Bill's slide said, the more strongly we feel about something, the harder it's going to be to see it from somebody else's perspective. And again, it also makes you vulnerable to getting your own feelings hurt, and that's never going to ease collaboration. So the whole purpose is to try and find some objective standard and see it from somebody else's perspective, so that maybe you can collaborate on helping them get you to that end position. When anger comes in, when hurt feelings come in, that's not going to help you negotiate an agreement with someone, whether it's a little thing or a big thing. You know, you think about, this is a great time of year to talk about negotiation. You know, are we having the holidays at our house? Are we having it at my mother's house? Are we having it at my husband's or my significant other's mother's house? Who's going to win? Everybody feels strong. Everybody's mother wants the family at their house, don't they? But sometimes we have to give a little. You know, this holiday we'll have it at one house, and the next holiday maybe we'll have it at the other side of the family's house. It's all about give and take.
Yes, very nice, very good. I'll take the next 2, and then you can take the 2 that follow. How's that?
Sure.
Yeah, you know, separate the people from the problem. You know, and again, that whole objectivity that Genea talked about. You know, don't blame the other person for the problem if you disagree. I mean, you know, because there's dynamics at work here, and the more you can partner with someone and not become an enemy, the more success you can have. If you do have a conflicted situation, you know, that may be, and I'm going to show you how those escalate when we're done with this PowerPoint. But if you do have a conflicted situation, sometimes, you know, level heads prevail. Sometimes it's better to just step back a second before you get too deep into it, and you know, use symbolic gestures when appropriate. Maybe a note of sympathy, an apology, statement of regret. I know every now and then I'm going to talk a little bit later about bumps, bruises, and headbangers, but sometimes, you know, when we both want something, we may both be going at the target, and we're both right, but we might have an interest conflict, which I'll tell you about, which is one of the 3. So maybe we bump, kind of like tapping a car's bumper, you know, but that's nothing that's going to hurt a relationship or anything like that. But sometimes it does happen. And, you know, you want to just realize that sometimes with some situations, with some people, with family, friends, business associates, colleagues, it does happen. But always deal with people as human beings. You know, the one thing I have pinned up here is always, always, always stay positive and be grateful for everyone's contributions. You know, and when you have that in your mindset, you know, because everybody's contributing something. And again, we want to relate to people the right way because it's so important. And, you know, remember too, that human beings focus on their interests. They all have powerful interests. Okay. Security. People don't want to feel like you threaten their security or economic well-being or their sense of belonging to a group. or recognition. You know, you just want to be fair. Want to meet people in the middle, find that common ground. And when you, and again, now some issues, again, I talked earlier about high stakes, low stakes, you know, what's all involved. I mean, obviously you want to be treated ethically, fairly. You want to have that good dialogue, is meaningful, equitable, empathetic. But sometimes we all know that just doesn't happen. People take positions, they want something depending upon the culture you're in. And sometimes it's easy to have a conflicted situation, especially during times of change. And because the perceptual sets are out there. So just keep that in mind. And this is something that the more you practice on certain areas, the more you retain it. At least that's how my brain works, that experiential learning, once I go down, and kinesthetic learning, and I learn it and I apply it and I do it again and again and again, I tend to I tend to be able to use it and adapt it into my my well-being. Genea, would you take the next two, please?
Okay. So it's always, to get what you want, you kind of have to see it from where that person's coming from. What are they looking for? To understand anything or to get what you want, sometimes you have to see it from the other person's perspective. Understand what they're looking for, or why they feel that one thing is important that maybe you don't think is important. Once you understand that, you may change your perspective, or at least you'll know how to talk to them about it and show them how you can meet both of your needs by moving forward into this solution. And not blaming someone, but just say, look, this is one of the ways that we can both get what we need. If we both do this, or we agree to that, then we can focus on this solution and not just what I want or just what you want. It has to be this collaboration. So that's what a negotiation is two people agreeing to something, and you have to work together. It can't be all about one person getting their way at the cost of another person, because that's not going to leave two people happy, and that's not going to be a good negotiation or a good outcome. Can we go to the next slide, Bill?
Yes.
And again, this goes back to seeing it from their perspective and maybe looking at new ideas. They tell us that two heads are better than one. So maybe we need that broader picture rather than our own little viewpoint, and being open to seeing something that you don't see, but somebody else does. And that might make you a stronger position if you can be open and go, basically stand in their shoes and look at it from their perspective. Think about the options that would meet your needs, that would help you get where you want to go without having a negative impact on somebody. How can you get what you want and still give them what you want, what they want, I'm sorry, so that both of you are winning? Because anytime you want to negotiate, you kind of are looking to get somebody to agree with you. That means you have to bring them around to your perspective, or you've got to open up your perspective and look at more than just what you want out of the issue. And it has to stay, the focus has to stay on the issue, and it should never become a personal thing. That goes back to taking the emotion out of it and trying to be unbiased and to be fair.
That's very good, Genea. Thank you. Thank you. You know, one thing I like to say, Derek, I noticed you're in your uniform. I want to thank you for your service. And I'd like to say, it reminded me of something too. You know, when I was in my Pepsi days, I remember we were selling to the nuclear plant, Exxon, I believe it was, in Cordova, Illinois. And the rules, you know, for security were incredible, right? And they had guards, and they had a whole protocol and everything else. And me being a sales marketing guy, you know, coming in, you know, I just knew there was nothing negotiable there. You have to follow those rules because they want, you know, these outcomes. Excuse me. And the point I want to make is understand the culture and context that you negotiate in. Understand that some things sometimes may not be negotiable. You know, it's a compliant type culture, and you know, and I respect that. But there are situations, you know, many times that it's negotiable. You know, we would like you to do this. How do you feel about that? Or here's where I'd like to see happen. And you get that whole dynamic going. And Sometimes if you're stuck, like Genea says, attack the problem, not the person, because if you don't agree, doesn't necessarily mean you have to ruin the relationship. And again, what I just like to say is think collaboratively, think about ways to think about those options. Use your creative side. As Genea said, this came together very well for Genea and I. We just kind of pieced out the work and we started to talk and boom, we had a presentation, right? Both of us contributing. And what I liked about it, she's easy to work with. She's easy to follow. We're collaborative. And we knew that we need to do this for the students because we have a vision out here in front of us. I have it right up here on my computer. Empower every student, support every student, enrich every student, and graduate every student. And that's, students matter. That's where our commitment is at. So she's easy to work with and negotiate with and collaborate with. So I really appreciate that. And what ought to be
just interject, Phil.
Yeah.
I think that part of that is because the how might be different, but we have the same end goal. And
Right.
So that's something you have to think about when you're negotiating is if we already agree on the same end goal, that's what we need to focus on. And the how is just the little stuff.
That's it. Boy, it was beautiful. Thank you. And, feasible solutions. Now, look through the eyes of different experts. None of us is as smart as all of us. Place yourself firmly in the shoes of the other person. Empathy, right? One thing that I always stress is empathy and compassion. And there's a little bit of a difference there because empathy is you're feeling the situation they have, but compassion is you're actually getting involved a little bit to make something happen for that person, and you're taking action. So, but walk in their shoes, understand that situation. That's empathy. Try to find something that other students and or faculty has agreed to in the past. When I would coach, students and faculty and everybody else, if they was bad bumps, we would go to work that out. But consider how implementing the decision might be difficult for the other side. If we do this, is the other side going to be harmed? Is there something wrong with that? I mean, now this sounds like a lot, like you got to think about, but the more you do this, the more you set your critical thinking mind toward that, and the more you examine your assumptions, the easier this becomes because you're taking little pieces and you're applying it. And, to me, is just so important. Would you like to cover this one, Genea, real quick?
No, I'm going to let you continue on if you don't mind.
Okay, no, absolutely. Thank you. The commit yourself to reaching a solution that's based on principle, not pressure. Pressure tactics could be, okay, we need this done by 4 o'clock, and are you going to be there? And this, and all of a sudden, you got your facial nonverbals, you got your sound, you got your body language. All of a sudden, you're adding some pressure to something when maybe you didn't need to. Sometimes with the individual, all you need to do is just do an ask and have some trust and work. But standards of fairness, efficiency, scientific merit, refer to precedents. Look for possible independent standards and fair solutions. If in fact, remember I talked about it, a stakes high or low, let's say it starts to get into, I'll just use that nuclear plant that I went to. Let's just say they were negotiating on what times I could come and I could pick them, and but they had certain windows and I had to negotiate for other windows, and all of a sudden now you're looking at different standards and fair solutions, and yet you're still showing respect on the other side too, so that you can meet those expectations. But you can apply these particular principles in a lot of different areas. Here's some examples of standards: professional standards, efficiency, equal treatment, moral standards. But don't yield to pressure. Follow your standards, be an ethical communicator and act ethical. I always said that good leaders improve, inspire, influence positively, and they have integrity. And when they're working with people, that's in the top of their mind. They understand the context and the culture, and they just know how to work with people and get relationships and results. Now, here we go. The 3 types of conflict. And this comes under Kenneth Thomas and Frederick Glassell and some of their studies. And actually, I've taught, I believe it's management or business 425 or management 425. It's a conflict. It was a 425 for the, but anyways, it was a conflict resolution course, and we talked about these things in the book. And now, interest conflicts, simply your interest. I'd like to have the meeting at 2. No, I want it at 4. Whose home are we going to eat at this weekend? Oh, I thought, well, we want to go here. Or, no, we have to be at grandma's, or no, we have to be over at mom's, or not. Now all of a sudden you got this, not a conflicted situation, right? Because maybe somebody said, no, you had it there last year. And then the next thing you know, the tone escalates and so forth. But those are good to work out and easy to work out, right? Now, cognitive conflicts is, I always used to do this with my students. I would hold up a Pepsi can in case here. It's a Claire Brun sparkling water. I don't know if you can see that, but I used to say, okay, I'd show them the top of a can. I said, what's a can? And I show that, and I show this. Well, you can't see it in it's fading away on me. Then I show the bottom. And I say, what's a can look like? They would say, oh, it has a pop top. One would say, oh, it's yellow on the side. The other would say it's bottom and there is no pop top. Now, how you see it, how they see it and how it really is, right? And that's a cognitive conflict where you're looking at things differently. Normative is simply a value type conflict. Those are the toughest to resolve. That's when people cross lines, they get emotional, they say the wrong things, they attack someone, they say something awful, they attack whatever that is, but they upset someone. And sometimes people quite aren't going to let you resolve that with a quick apology, or they may. But the point is, interest conflicts are the easiest to resolve. Cognitive conflicts are those, what's the computer? I don't like that computer. Well, why? Well, it doesn't have, a docking port or this or that. Well, can't you do it this way, and plug it in over here instead of that? All of a sudden, you might have some type of interest conflict on how do you recharge and reset this computer. Because you wanted something and the supplier gave you something else. So you may have a little conflicted situation, but again, the higher the stakes, the higher that goes. The bumps, bruises, and headbangers, those are simply, two people bumping. I showed you that before. Bruises, somebody gets upset, says something, the next thing well, I didn't care for that tone. When you talk to someone, always remember in communication principles that I think that the number is like 65 to 80% is nonverbal. All right. It's how people see your face, your sound, your body language. So realize that all that matches, your words and realize that people see that. So sometimes, someone might come across strong with the tone or the whatever, and it might create a bruise. Someone might shout at someone or whatever. But sometimes those bruises take a little more time to heal. A bump is easy to sometimes fix, but sometimes we want to work things out a certain way. And the headbangers are when you're really arguing, going back and forth, and there's tension, and the whole dynamic is a whole different way. But expand the bigger picture, see the many positive possibilities. Don't try to shrink it. Change brings opportunity. Now, again, we're going to give you this. I'm not going to go through it, but prepare well in advance. Just understand the dynamics. But these are good reminders for you. Some final tidbits. Anger to resolve. Anger with more anger? Nope, not at all. Talk to each other, not about each other. If someone doesn't agree, don't go off and say, well, I wanted that person there at 3:00 and they were there at 3:10, and then you go tell the rest of the world, and all of a sudden somebody's upset, and that works its way back around. But when you maybe just go to pick the phone up and say, don't worry about that being there at 3:15, I'm fine with that. We're good. Hey, if we could get there at 3, though, it's better for the students, or it's better for everyone else. That's a great way to resolve something. But does the relationship matter? Yeah, you gotta care about people. Improve conflict resolution, improves relationships. Sometimes when you have a conflicted situation with someone, what's beautiful with it, the bonds and the roots grow stronger because you worked together, you worked it out. Yeah, well, we were bumping, but you know what? I think we needed that. I'm glad we find each other's perspective. I know you a little better now, and my apologies to you. And all of a sudden you're together and you're appreciating each other. Excellence in relations and customer service are important to growth and retention, especially when we work with students and when we grow, and whether you're on the job or you want to retain an employee. I mean, make people feel good, be fair, be consistent. The experience that people have with you is what they remember the most. And I'll give you something that was given to me years ago when I started teaching. One of my students gave me a plaque and she said, because I was used to say in business, you know, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And the student gave me she framed that, but only she said the students don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. See, she was able to give me what I needed, I guess, my confidence, my credibility, but she appreciated my caring. And, you know, that was important to me. And as a matter of fact, the plaque is up here in the back here. But somebody else told me this. They said, sometimes they'll forget what you taught them, but don't ever forget how you made them feel. You see? And when you think about that, that's a good way to connect to what they were supposed to learn. So Derek, let's just say Charlotte and you, and, you know, we bump one day at commencement, we see each other. You may remember Genea and I just for this particular moment. You might go, I remember that course. Hey, you know what I took away from it? That's how it happens. It's growth. We're all growing. We're all coming. But remember, that's important. This is just something that I learned at a principal's breakfast. You know, because in my Pepsi days, I'd go to these principal breakfasts. They'd invite me because we do this adopt a school program. And what would happen is one of the principals stood up there one time and said this: before the rest, your attitude must pass the test. Right? Remember what I told you earlier about nonverbals, face, sound, body language? Hopefully you like our tone, you like our sound, you like our face, you like our body language. And, you know, just remember that. But talk the walk, walk the talk. Remember, people will watch more how you walk it than how you talk it. First way you establish credibility is your words. And then the way you establish credibility is through your actions. And I can tell you, I just use Genea right now, that every interface I've ever had with Genea and the honors program and outside of it has been wonderful. It's been perfect. It's been consistent. And it's just a pleasure to work with her. Now, I don't know if you ever read the book Fish Philosophy. It's kind of fun. It's an older book, but you know, when you go to Seattle and they're throwing the fish around and everybody's motivated and happy, right? Well, here's their motto, you know, choose your attitude. It's a choice. I'm choosing to be positive. Play, make work, you know, theory X, theory Y, McGregor, right? Why work is as natural as play. Enjoy it. Make their day. Notice people. Be present. Be in the moment. So important. Genea, would you like to just talk about change real quick? And, you know, and we can kind of stay here because we're headed to the finish line and we'll be done very soon. But if you take this slide, maybe and just mention it and then I can jump in.
Okay, well, I mean, the bottom line is we've all heard the saying that nothing is as permanent as change, or the only thing that stays the same is everything changes. But change can be difficult, could be frightening for some people. They get comfortable, they feel safe, they don't want to change. The organization's going a new way, the company's doing something different, the marketing plan is changing. Whatever the change may be, it can be frightening. People feel very insecure, and sometimes that's why they are so resistant to change. They want to stay in that space where they feel safe. And so if you're going to win and get them to agree with you and step out on this change, you're going to have to show them why it benefits them and give them some sense that they're not jumping off a cliff. They're just stepping out on a bridge that's going to take them someplace new. So you're going to have to build that interpersonal relationship with them. There's going to have to be some communication. There's going to have to be a little bit of trust. And that goes back to the body language, the facial language, the tone that you're using when you're teaching or talking or selling. Whatever the communication you're having is, you want them to have this positive perspective about it, because things can escalate. And the harder you, some people, and I have to confess that this is one of my weaknesses, the harder you push me to do something, the harder I'm going to dig my feet in. But if you take a soft approach and you try and educate me and show me why this is better and how great it's going to be, I'll probably follow right along with you. But if you give me this, you got to do it because I said so, I'm going to dig my feet in and be a mule. That's one of my weaknesses. I need you to kind of show me why this is a good thing and not just tell me to go do it. I don't just follow along very well sometimes.
Absolutely. And, I keep thinking of Barbara Rogoff. I do, we do, you do, and show me the way sometimes. And that's so important. And give me some meaning. And Derek and Charlotte, I hope we're doing good so far. And you're happy that you tuned in. And I hope you got a takeaway or two so far, because I'm headed for the home stretch. I would ask you, if you don't mind, would you type in the chat maybe a couple things that you took away? Because we always like a little feedback to know, like, oh yeah, that resonated, or this piece was better than that one. So if you don't mind, just keep engaged. But we sure appreciate you listening. And again, this is not only for you, but it's going to be for some of the other students as we post this in the honors program. Now, I just wanted to show you a couple visuals as I head to the finish line here. Is change. What does it look like? A lot of people think that, well, you start it and you end up here and here's a future state. Well, in reality, there's a transition state. Sometimes that change can take a long time. And during that stage, there could be some conflicted situations. No, you were supposed to do it this way. Well, they don't want this, or you're going to have to do this now. And we want it this way. And all of a sudden you got some conflicts, and maybe somebody spoke to you wrong, or somebody yelled, or something happened. That certainly occurs sometimes during a transition state. But the key is, where are you going? Where are you headed? What's the goals? Handle people with care, give them encouragement. As Genea said, work with them, never take away hope, help everyone on the team. Remember WIFM, I always used to say that's the most listened to radio station in the world. What's in it for me? Okay, remember, people need to see what's in it for them. I air what's in it for me today. The satisfaction that I've worked in the direction and division, and I got to work with a great colleague, that we collaborated together, that we had a little fun paying it forward and teaching here in the particular forum. Now Rosabeth Moss Kanter is one of my favorite authors, and she's a Harvard Business Review professor, and I've had the privilege and pleasure to watch a lot of her videos and attend some virtual workshops and so forth. But she says it's Enduring Principles for Changing Times, her book, video presentation. She just says, always remember, have a higher sense of purpose. Keep an open mind, embrace diversity, meaning everyone's diverse views, and everything that DEI and diversity encompasses. And find common ground with people. So important. Find that common ground. Laura Palmer Noon, who was our provost, and I remember she said this: 3 most important attributes to be successful: attitude, attitude, attitude. Boy, I agree with that. And I always try to make my attitude my biggest asset. Now, with that said, I did promise you in the home stretch, and Genea and I hope that you're doing well. And I just want to give you a peek at a couple other things, and we'll close this out, and Genea can take some final comments from you. But here's something that this is a presentation I did in 2015, but I would be remiss if I didn't read one of these quotes here. Leading and managing change are not easy processes. In fact, planned transformational change in organizations can be seen, as stated earlier, messy because of politics, power, emotions, and conflicts are interlaced with technical, culture, and social expertise. That's why change management and organization development skills, competencies, and experience are essential for diagnosing, designing, implementing, and sustaining not only specific plan changes, but continuous change. Going forward, it is not only change that's required for most organizations, but change is characterized and supported by agile and learning leaders, followers, and supporters. And when you really think about continuous change, the world, we went through with COVID, what we're still going through, all the adjustments, it's changing our world, supply chain management, et cetera. So we got to be a little bit patient and understand situations and know that, and keep an eye on the bigger picture, and be good to people and work with people through these situations. So, but that's a good quote, and you're welcome to this too. We'll share this with you, these notes. But as I move down, I'm not going to read them. I did promise you that Two types of conflict: interpersonal and intrapersonal. Sometimes that's the internal conflict. Keep thinking through something, and and sometimes you just need to talk to somebody. Hey, I'm feeling this. I'm wondering, are these two roles conflicting, or should we do this better? Sometimes you just need to talk that out so you don't have the conflict. Interpersonal, again, two or more parties, social units. But here is a nugget I hope you take away. You've got the three kinds of conflict: interest conflict, goals and goal conflicts; cognitive conflict, cognitive or judgment conflicts. Just going to tap these. You'll have this as a handout. Normative conflicts, they arise from the perception that the other party's behavior should have been different than it was and was expected to be. For example, issues of ethics. That wasn't fair. That's not just. They treated me wrong. All of a sudden you've got some conflict there that's going to be difficult to maybe unpack and resolve. Here is the model. I'm going to show you the 9 stages. Here is Frederick Glassell. And this he is Dr. Frederick Glassell. He's still, but he talks about, when you look at a conflict, look at the structural conditions, the conflict process, episodes and events, and then the outcomes. Sometimes you need third-party intervention just to solve it, right? You need an objective source in there because people might take 2 positions. So sometimes that's good. But here's what happens. Here's what he says in his model, that usually there's a trigger event. And then there is, this conflicted interest, cognitive or normative emerge, right? Trigger events happen, and all of a sudden, you didn't know about it and you're positioned on it and you're not happy with it. And all of a sudden you got a conflict with that person, whatever that may be. And again, depending upon the stakes, it could be low, high, but maybe it's somebody removed the deal. The realtor said they were going to sell your house and they didn't. They led you to believe this, and you went through all this packing. And all of a sudden the trigger event was, guess what? We're not selling your house. We never did have an offer. I was just doing that to try to keep you happy. Well, that's going to make somebody angry or something. That might be kind of tough to resolve. That's kind of a far-fetched situation. But anyway, here is Frederick Glassell's phases. I just love this. First thing you see, rationality and control. You're trying to cooperate, but you're getting in this debating style. There's interaction through some of the deeds and not words, but you're starting to become aware there's a conflicted situation, right? And you're saying that dynamic just isn't right. Now, if you don't resolve it there, it can move into the next phase where the relationships start to get severed. The parties, there's a tension, distrust emerges, lack of respect, hostilities may evolve. Parties cannot imagine solving conflicts together and attempt to exclude each other. Now they isolate. Now they don't want to talk. That's not a good thing in this particular model. But people get concerned for their reputation. I was right. They sometimes lose face, moral outrage, dominance, strategies, aggression. But that's in that phase. And then finally, aggression or destruction. Now, the way this was taught to me back in grad school was, this is why sometimes wars are created. When 2 countries believe in this and, see the bigger picture, saying, you know what I'm talking about. And one's position here, one's position there. And because you don't believe this, we believe this. And all of a sudden, they're going to war over something. And sometimes that happens and destruction occurs. But you can see the steps here: systematic destructive campaigns, attacks against the power nerves of the enemy, and total destruction. That's what it looks like on the conflict stairs. I want to tell you that it has been an absolute honor and a pleasure to be here and to record this. And I see our other colleagues, Dr. Stephanie Anderson is here. Stephanie, welcome. And Genea, I'm going to give you, you can close this out if you don't mind.
Well, I want to give Stephanie a few minutes to say hi.
Hello, I really enjoyed listening. I was a little late logging in. I had some technical difficulties, but this was a very informative session. So it's been good.
I told them at the beginning, every time I listen to Bill talk, I learn something new and take something away from it. So it was a good session for me as well.
Yes, and I think the topic is just so, so important all of the time, but we're heading into the holidays and difficult conversations arise during those times. So it has personal importance for many of us too.
Well,
Absolutely.
I agree. And I'm sorry, Bill.
No, and I have to tell you, I want to show you how collaborations make things really work and how pleasurable it is to work with both of these two colleagues. Genea, I told you how I've interacted and engaged with her, but I have to tell you too, Stephanie would be in the audience, and Stephanie and I were on another committee, and through the student support committee and with community standards, and we ended up collaborating. And next thing you know, we're putting together a presentation, and she's the principal investigator, and we're teaming up. We're teaming up together, and we're going to do some good. But all these things emerge when you're open to experience, right? When you find common ground, right? When you're treating people right. But hopefully these principles, you can, what I always do is something I want to learn. I take it, I put it on an index card, and I tape it up here, and I look at it, and I just live it for a while. And by the way, active learning is the process of doing and observing, and it's dialogue with self and others, right? That's pretty simple. But that's how I based my teaching foundation, on active learning, Bonwell and Eisen. And what I want to tell you is repetition is an active learning method. So the more I see it, the more I practice it, the more I see it again, the more I practice, all of a sudden it sticks. That's just me. It might be different for some people, but that's kind of how I learn best, through practice. That's why I told Stephanie, I said, boy, I'm so honored to be on this UFP team, this grant team with her, because I don't have a doctorate. I've got a graduate degree, and I know what I know, and I know what I don't know, and I know what I might have missed academically. But I know that I've been okay. I've done a lot of successful things and helped students. And so anytime I get to be around Genea or Stephanie or others, I'm learning. So we never stop learning. So, and she is a social psychology and all that. So I'm looking forward to teaching one of her courses to tune up a little bit too. So in 2022. So go ahead, Genea. I'm sorry I got long-winded there, but I'm excited. So
That's great. That's great. So, I mean, the point has been made that we negotiate conflict in every stage of our lives, the little things, the big things. If you look around us in the world today, and my expertise is in Homeland Security and public management. And so one of the classes that I teach focuses on civil discourse and our role in civics and our role in society. And I think that maybe that's something we've all forgotten, is that we have to work together to reach our end goals of a better country and a better world, and taking care of one another. And so hopefully what you'll take away from this conflict management section is a little bit of how to better engage with people and engage in that civil discourse and be a part of the resolution, and not dig your heels in and be a part of the problem. I also want to take a few minutes to give Derek and Charlotte a chance to say hello, ask any questions, and give us some feedback if they will. Derek tells me he's a member of the honors program, and Charlotte was just accepted. So we're pleased.
Thank you. I don't, and I'm sorry. So I had 2 teeth pulled yesterday, so I'm not as talkative as I normally would be. But I'm just really honored to be here. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to listen especially from a different perspective. I think conflict right now, resolution is really important. I work 100% virtually. And so the agents that I work with, sometimes it's really needed. It's needed now more than it was before, that when we were in brick and mortar, because it was different. It's face to face. There's no misinterpretation of how I'm saying it or why I'm saying it or the body language, because we're here. But in this space, and now having to manage agents that are in different locations, this is something that I truly, truly appreciate, because it will help me in this space. It's different to when you manage folks that you've worked with for so long, but when you're in a virtual space and you've never had the pleasure or opportunity to engage with someone, body language or lack thereof, or maybe them not being on camera, I'm not sure, if they're receiving the information or feedback because I can't see them. So I took some notes and I really appreciate this and I look forward to the other classes as well. So thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. Derek, any thoughts?
No, I think this is an excellent presentation. I really enjoyed it. Unfortunately, conflict resolution is a hit or miss in the military. Kind of like Bill was saying, some people, some situations, you're either right or you're wrong. But there is still some opportunity to apply conflict resolution, especially in my workplace. So, it's definitely some interesting perspectives, especially on collaboration and thinking about like cognitive bias and normative conflicts and cognitive conflicts, learning about those two different perspectives. So
Very nice.
I think we all kind of know about that stuff, but we never really consider it.
Learn to know. Yeah, good
Well,
point.
and as Bill said, you have to practice it. You can read about it all you want, but until you put it in practice and you live it, it doesn't get easier.
Yeah, agreed. Repetition.
Absolutely. Well, what an honor and a pleasure to be here today. And thanks for all your attention and interest and participation and feedback, and goes a long way. And your words today too, as we share this out, are not in vain. Other students will hear this. We'll all be able to learn from each other. So appreciate you giving all that feedback and two great examples. So thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Okay, well,
Thank you.
we
That's
wish
it.
you a
Thank
Thanksgiving
you.
filled with joy and gratitude, and everybody be safe and happy Thanksgiving.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
happy
Same to
Thanksgiving,
everyone
everyone.
else.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. All right.